Okay, let's see how this works. I think Restream is gonna add a logo, so that's fine.
1,000
Because I'm too cheap to pay for Restream.
days since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the war rages on undiminished. Ukraine.
This is gonna be super weird for people who, oh fuck. It's gonna be super weird for people who watched our YouTube channel that's pretty much dead for all this time. And now suddenly there's a live stream. I'm talking to people who are not even on YouTube. But whatever, it's fine. That's just our style.
President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the European in Parliament in Brussels just a short time ago. Let's listen in to some of what he had to say.
We have succeeded not only in preventing Putin from taking Ukraine, but also in defending the freedom of all European nations.
Putin.
No one can enjoy calm waters amid a storm. And we must do everything to...
Wait, what? No one can enjoy calm waters and make a storm. Okay.
end this war
I don't know what
fairly
that means.
and justly.
DW's Terry Schultz
What?
joins us now from Brussels.
Okay.
Terry, you were listening to President Zelensky's speech in which he struck a defiant tone, didn't he? Tell us what you made of what he said.
He did, but you know, I was actually surprised that, for one thing, he didn't have a longer speech. You know, sometimes he has very long and detailed speeches, and this actually wasn't. But yes, he started off by saying, look what we've been able to do. And of course, with fewer weapons and fewer capabilities than he would like to have, we have been able to hold off Russia. But what really struck me about this speech was that it seemed to be a pep talk for Europe. You know, it's 1,000 days that his country has been rained on by Russian weapons, and he's telling Europe, don't be afraid, you can do more, pointing out that even with these up to 11,000 North Korean troops that have now been sent to help Russia, he pointed out that's still fewer troops than Europe has. Russia is still a smaller force than you Europeans have. He pointed out also that more sanctions are needed. He mentioned specifically the Shadow Fleet, these
Oh my god, okay, this is a little cringe. How can you... Okay. I don't know, man. I don't follow Zelensky closely. I know some people like him, some people don't like him. I don't like him particularly. I don't like his vibe, just on a personal level. But I don't know. I'm just saying I couldn't sit like this and smile like this while people were clapping at me because my country is at war.
These tankers, these unseaworthy vessels in which Putin is shipping oil below the sanction levels, sanction price levels, so he gets around them. He was really, in my mind, exhorting Europe to look harder at what it can do and to be brave in the face of his country having faced 1,000 days of this terror.
Terry, thank you so much.
Is the stream even working, I wonder? I'm seeing a slideshow on Kick. I don't know. I guess that's a good question.
That's DW's Terry Schultz reporting from Brussels.
Hopefully it is.
Now, after 1,000 days of war in Ukraine, the EU is weighing the next significant milestone, the second coming of Donald Trump to the White House. Trump is already influencing the way Europe plans to defend itself, and there is more change to come.
Ready or not, here he comes.
The European Union sounds so nice, so lovely, right? All the nice European little countries, they get together. They're brutal.
If only they did get together when it comes to collective security. European governments have fretted for years that a second Trump term could sharply reduce U.S. military support. This is not a drill any longer.
Wait, so fuck. Hey, Kobanga. So I'm streaming on YouTube. but I'm not streaming on Kick. Fuck. That's kind of the whole idea, but that's okay. I guess YouTube is fine.
Longer.
Europe is in real danger in the sense that we aren't ready for the possibility of an armed attack on EU territory or NATO territory.
Too many military capabilities can still only be provided on a large scale by the US, as European leaders slowly tackle their long-standing to-do list.
Increase spending, do more to build up Europe's defense industrial base, which is extremely important. So,
yeah, but these are all long-term things that Europe should have done ages ago. But the problem is they're not going to help anytime soon. They're not going to stop the Russian advance that's happening right now. So I don't think Europe can do anything significant for Ukraine. Well, let's qualify. Let's say during the next year, at least. Without the U.S., it's just not feasible.
Fund more industry cooperation, acquisition cooperation, research and development at the EU level.
Franke says these initiatives should be further along.
As part of efforts to jolt EU countries out of this complacency, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen is trying a new tactic. She's appointed the bloc's first ever defense commissioner. He's from Lithuania, a country that invests a lot in its own military, and for which the question of whether Europe can defend its own territory could be a matter of life or death.
Okay, well, look okay, I guess, on YouTube. I'm just going to assume Twitch is fine, too.
Andrius Kubilius gets it. He says he'll present a plan of action within his first 100 days.
Only working together, we can build a stronger, more resilient, and more autonomous European defense and
Stronger and more resilient European
space sector, so that EU is ready.
This guy's from Latvia or Lithuania or whatever.
For the most extreme military contingencies from wherever they will come.
Kubilius reminded lawmakers
Defense in Space. That's a cool title.
in response to their worried questions that those extreme military threats come from Vladimir Putin and not Donald Trump. He urged them to help simplify the European markets, such as removing legal and political hurdles to making joint weapons purchases and
Was that guy's crashing his ass?
standardizing
pretty sure
155
he
millimeter
was.
artillery shells.
This is Sakprøve. I don't know which is this Swedish or Norwegian. I don't know. I don't know what that means. Does that mean it's good or does that mean it's bad?
So ammunition can be produced and used by multiple countries. Former Latvian Prime Minister Krišjānis Kariņš says sometimes policymakers just need to get out of the way.
We should take off the political table as much as we can, allow the industry to develop, and take away the hurdles.
Take off the political table? Oh my god, what's wrong with my brain? I don't understand what people are saying. First there was Zelensky with his fucking koans, and now it's this guy says take what off the table? Take the table off? Hey Peter, how are you?
For industry to work, and then we'll be able to meet our security commitments.
Or at least closer to being able to defend EU territory, even though another huge factor in European security, whether or not Donald Trump will help Ukraine defeat Russia, remains an unnerving unknown.
And we can speak now to Benjamin Tallis. He's the director of the Democratic Strategy Initiative. That's a Berlin think tank. He's also the co-author of an open letter that's been published today calling on Europe and Canada to join forces in defending Ukraine from Russian aggression. Welcome to DW. Thank you.
Yeah, Canada is a game changer. We will activate all of our Tim Hortons and mobilize the Northern Bear Force. And use the exploding curling things. I don't know. I'm not familiar with curling. What they do, what they're called. the things. They could be made to explode, I assume. Fucking Canada.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, well, Canada is a developed country. Okay, so yeah, Canada can help with money. Canada can help with certain things. I think Canada does have certain weapons that are useful for Ukraine, like APCs. I guess anti-air, NASAMS, I think. But yeah, I mean, good luck with that.
Today, let's talk about this open letter. Could you tell us
How's life, Peter?
which specific actions that you are suggesting these nations take to enhance Ukraine's defense capabilities?
Yes, Anya, good day and a pleasure to be with you. Together with a very esteemed group of signatories, what we recommend are 5 key things that Europe and Canada should do, and indeed can do, in order to secure Ukraine, regardless of what Donald Trump does. So the first thing is to arm Ukraine to win. And that means continuing to send military kit from our stocks, but also to invest in Ukraine's defense industry. And
Learn about sprites. Oh, that's cool. I remember that was the coolest part of C64. I wonder how they work on Amiga. I never did a lot of Amiga programming. Just did a little bit of the name of the system, the Kickstart. I forgot. I did that, like the Windows system, but I didn't do I never looked into sprites. I did sprites on Commodore 64. You could have like, I think 16. How many sprites on C64? 8. Okay. And they're 21 by 24. So I don't know what Amiga can do. Amiga sprites. How many? Oh, it's also 8. Here's a get sprite function, simple sprite. Okay, well, this is much more high level than C64 would do. Must be super fun.
Allow it to use the latent capacity that is there. It's currently only operating at about 1/3 of its capacity, but also to focus on developing new emerging military technologies that can offset Russia's advantages and actually tilt the battlefield in Ukraine's favor. The second key thing is to seize all of Russia's frozen assets to fund Ukraine's victory, the $300 billion.
I don't know what you would do. I mean, I don't know what they're discussing in particular. Arming Ukraine to win sounds good because that's not what the West has been doing, as we know. So if you're serious about winning, yeah, that's definitely what you should be doing. And the same can be said for Russia, which doesn't seem to be trying to win in conventional terms. Seems to be trying to achieve certain goals, territorial goals in particular. Okay, well, I'm being maybe unfair because Europe does have technologies. Europe does have technology that could help Ukraine. That technology would need much more investment, and I'm primarily talking about aircraft-related things. So, okay, this is something I was wondering. Can F-16 launch meteors? It can. Okay, so you can update it for Meteor. So this would be, I don't know if it would be a game changer, but this would be the interface electronics, launch rails. There's a bunch of the stuff. You need this for bit checks. If the medium missile was not designed for the standard US launcher, extensive effort is needed. Okay, so this guy I think doesn't know. Easily plausible. Mr. Zelensky. Okay, well, no, I don't think people know. But this sounds doable to me. And so this would make an impact. Because this would kill Su-34s, and Russia doesn't have endless supply of Su-34s. And if you run out of Su-34s, or you're too scared to use them liberally, as they do now, they use them on the front line continuously. Well, not on the front line, they use them from far away, standoff ranges, which is the whole point, obviously. Well, then if you can cuck them, then you would make an impact. That is very hard to do as an underdog, because Russia is still dominating the air and is likely to continue dominating the air until the end of the war. And by that, I don't mean they have air superiority necessarily in terms of they can fly wherever they want and they can strike whatever they want and the anti-air is suppressed. Far from it. By that, I mean when you're in the air, you're kind of fucked if you're fighting against Russia, because they have way better systems against you, because even the F-16 is not super great against what Russia has on the 4th generation level, 4+, I guess, Su-35s, and then they do have Su-57s as well. Not many, but, you know, some. And so, generally that means you have to fly super low, and it's relatively hard to attack Su-34s. And Su-34s, of course, fly escorted by Su-35s. So, easier said than done, but I think the missile would change a lot of things because it's a beyond visual range, very advanced missile, probably one of the better ones, or even one. People could argue it's one of the best ones. And having a lock on a Su-34 would almost guarantee that Su-34 would be shot down. Meteor is very fast. It's pretty smart. A lot of the stuff is confidential, but based on the tests and based on the results that we have and we know, just based on the outcomes, it sounds like it's probably at the top with you know, the others like AMRAAM, extended range, and things like that, which obviously Europe, I don't know how many of those Europe would be able to provide without the US. But I think this is hypothetical that is not super likely to happen, honestly. Like the US completely withdrawing. Although, I think it's possible now that we have Trump as the US president, and we have people who will be running the Ukrainian negotiations, presumed negotiations, will very likely not be very friendly to Ukraine necessarily. It will just be trying to get the war done and you know, call it a day. You know, it's a possibility, and in this possibility, I think Europe is way more likely to just jump on the bandwagon and support Trump's calls to peace, freeze the conflict, and wait for Trump to wait for his term to basically expire. I think that's the plan. I think they're going to wait for a Democratic president, and then Ukraine is going to wait too, and then it's probably going to start over. So the situation where the US completely pulls out, but the Europeans keep supporting Ukraine on the same level, I don't know how likely that is. That sounds a little improbable to me.
Billion in frozen assets, most of which are held in Europe. Third is to extend air defense over Western Ukraine and use it to cover coalition ground troops who could be put in to conduct non-combat tasks like demining, logistics, and training. So those are three key things to start off that would happen in Ukraine. But there's more to it. There's two other things we suggest, which are to provide real security guarantees on the way to NATO membership.
Oh my God, what a horrible tie.
So to actually provide mutual defense.
It's literally the worst tie I've ever seen in my life. And that includes novelty ties, you know, like the ones that, you know, geeks like to wear. This is literally the worst tie ever. Look at it. It looks like a towel.
guarantees for Ukraine after the
Maybe it
end of
is.
current hostilities. And lastly, that we need to be able to show that we can stand up for ourselves. So each of these coalition members that we see should commit to spending at least 3% of GDP on defense and should make clear to both Russia and China that we won't be pushed around.
All right, so comprehensive.
It sounds like, you know, like anti-bullying or something. Oh, well, we'll show them. You just stand up to that bully. Okay. Stand up to that bully assumes that you've been fucking investing money in your defense before it happened, not when the war is about to happen or is already happening, arguably, for Europe, because it's, I mean, Russia when okay, let's just take a step back. Okay. And just imagine Russia actually winning in Ukraine, which it doesn't seem to, let's be clear, doesn't seem to be trying to do. To me, Russia winning in Ukraine would be Russia attacking very aggressively, very massively through the, I guess, Sumy region, like something like here, which they, by the way, already did. So this direction right here, or, you know, fuck it, use Belarus again or whatever. You know, you can do that. And attack from the north. It's easier said than done. It's really hard to do this. So Sumy seems to be the most promising direction. This was actually considered, apparently, at one point in time, but the Ukrainians were defending pretty hard, and they just changed their mind and attacked in different directions, as we know, very, very successfully. like this one, for example. Being sarcastic, this failed completely. Of course, what is working right now for them is the is this, which has the potential to collapse the whole Donbass defensive formation of Ukraine. But here, where it would actually give them victory, because they would be controlling Kiev. Yeah, they wouldn't be controlling the west of Ukraine, but let's be realistic, they can't control the west of Ukraine. They can maybe control Kiev, well, the left bank of the Dnipro River, but controlling Lviv, good luck with that. Okay. People don't even speak Russian there, and so, yeah. I mean, many people don't speak Russian in this region either. Like, most people in Ukraine speak Ukrainian, but that's a separate point. So if they did have this goal and they attacked Kiev and took Kiev, okay, does anybody really believe that the war will be over at that point and that will be done? And then, oh, well, you know, Ukraine lost Kiev and that's it. Or like, technically, you would lose Ukraine at that point. And let's think about that for a moment, okay? So there's a Putin's representative in Kiev. Okay, let's say it's that, whatever, whoever, Murayev, somebody, okay, from Ukraine. It would be somebody from Ukraine. Medvedchuk, I don't know. Very low popular support. But that doesn't matter. Let's forget about the popular support. Let's forget about the insurgents that would appear. Let's forget about all of that. Let's assume the Ukrainian people would stay at home and just blindly and peacefully accept their, you know, Russian overlords, which definitely is a possibility. We don't know what would happen because so far we've seen some resistance in the occupied territories, but not so much. But that's mostly because people leave before the Russians come in, and then people who stay are the people who want to, you know, be under Russian occupation. They want them there, so they stay, most of them. In Kiev, I don't know if that would be the case, but let's assume. It doesn't matter. What you would have is, you would have a giant... So the military of Ukraine would presumably escape to the west, but you would still have a giant number of people under your control as Russia. And those people would be betrayed by the West, as they would see it. They would be betrayed by the West. They would be... the assistance from the West was slow, inadequate, insufficient, and they lost. That's what we're envisioning, right? Do you think those people would be would not be, with enough propaganda, could not be turned against the West and be made to fight on the Russian side. I think they would be, especially those who stay to welcome the Russians. Because the thinking would be, okay, I'm a Ukrainian. Maybe I already don't like Zelensky. There's a lot of people like that. It does have popular support, but many, many people don't like Zelensky. Okay, and then Zelensky, in their eyes, loses the war. Okay, Putin comes, now it's Putin's government, it's a puppet state, something like maybe Belarus or whatever. Okay. Do you really like the West after that? Do you really believe or trust the West? Or do you believe any of those ideals or ideas or bullshit or promises that they made? No, you don't. You are Belarus. And at best, you will just be Belarus and allow Russia to use you as a territory for military operations, which, of course, Belarus did and still does. Or, at worst, you will be mobilized, you will be drafted into the Russian military, and you will be fighting against those Europeans if needed, which very likely will be needed. Okay, because we're talking about a scenario where probably Moldova would be the next potential thing to do for Russia, because Odessa, of course, is very useful on the Black Sea, and then, Moldova is kind of easy to take. Transnistria, and maybe the whole of Moldova would be not too hard to take because they're not in NATO and they're not sure that they want to be in NATO, and they're now at the point where they want to join, and there was a very close victory by President Sandu. And so what I'm saying is if Russia wins, Russia will also win the Ukrainian people in some way. Some will leave, some will fight against Russia, they will be, oppressed and killed and so on. But some will be fighting on the Russian side, or at least against the West. And I think that's the worst thing that can happen for the West, because having a Ukraine that's against you is so much worse than having Ukraine that's fighting for itself and indirectly for you. And then let's remember the countries that border Ukraine, which is Poland primarily. But we have, Romania, Slovakia, and so on. But primarily, let's talk about Poland. Do you think Poland will be okay with this? Do you think Poland will just sit and watch while Putin rolls into Kiev, takes over the government? And I don't think they will. And I think that, and we saw, very brazen moves by the Poles in the beginning of the war when they tried to provide weapons and aircraft and so on to Ukraine, when it was not allowed by Biden and so on in the very beginning. You remember when they said, no, they can't give them aircraft. Oh, those were the times. I think they would start a hybrid operation of basically stopping the Russian invasion. We talked about this. Poles have tried to buy 500 HIMARS systems. The Ukrainians have 2-digit numbers. Okay. I think probably less than 100, much less than 100. The Russians have maybe something like 90 of their equivalent, which is Tornado S, and they probably have nowhere close to the amount of missiles that they need for them. So Poland is actually getting ready for war. They're training their Air Force is training continuously to bomb Kaliningrad and so on. Hey, Gob. And so, yeah, I don't know how people imagine. I don't know how people imagine the Ukrainian defeat, but it very likely will not happen the way people imagine it, because from what I've seen when I talk to people about that, they seem to imagine Ukraine rolling over, capitulating, and then there's peace, and then that's it, and then there's a frozen conflict. You have to remember that we have free agents involved in the form of countries that have vested interests in Ukraine not losing, like I said, Poland would be one of them, but also the Baltic countries. Okay, you could argue, okay, Baltic countries are small. What can they do about it? Well, they can. So the Baltic countries, for example, are financing the Ukrainian drone production directly. They're all kind of collectively doing that, and that's extremely helpful to Ukraine. And they're also financing the Ukrainian missile production. Their new Palynica missile and or drone, whatever you want to call it. And the I'm not sure about the Grim 2, but that's the Ukrainian Iskander knockoff. That's that's a viable missile that just needs financing. Those countries are helping, and they've given pretty much all of the weapons they had to Ukraine as well, and because they're very, very directly interested in Ukraine winning, or at least Ukraine not losing. I think if you compare the number of countries that want Ukraine to win, it's a relatively small number, I think. If you compare, for various reasons, but if you compare that to the number of countries that don't want Ukraine to lose, you can definitely count the US among those countries. And you can definitely count most Republicans in that number in the US. I think it's a false narrative that the Republicans want Ukraine to lose. Most Republicans maybe don't want Ukraine to win necessarily, because what would that even mean? Do they believe that's possible? Are they worried that Russia will, start using nukes, or whatever the reasons are? The Ukrainian victory necessarily, because it's just not very defined by the Biden administration from the very beginning, that's not a thing for most people, but not letting Ukraine lose is a thing for most Republicans. Yeah, maybe I should say most establishment Republicans, because nobody knows what, how Trump feels about this. But I have serious doubts that Trump would be okay with losing Ukraine completely. I think what Trump has expressed okayness with is, let's freeze the conflict, let's stop the killing, and let's get Nobel Peace Prize. if we can get that, please. The only reason why Putin didn't nuke Ukraine is because he's interested in the Trump deal. No, I think the only reason why Putin didn't nuke Ukraine is because China told him not to. Because China was expressly against nuclear escalation of any sort. And if you remember, when President Xi visited Moscow, he used very, very direct language, which China almost never uses, to say that there should absolutely be no nukes. Yeah, I think that's way more important for Putin than what the West feels. The U.S. maybe threatened in some way and told them, okay, we will do that. I don't know if Putin, I feel that if we feel that, Biden is cucked, I don't know if Putin doesn't feel that. I think he does. And honestly, using the nukes was probably a good idea, isolated from, the other consequences that it would have. But just isolated from that, if he used tactical nukes on the battlefield against Ukraine, I don't think that would scare the Ukrainians, but that would definitely scare Joe Biden and Scholz. And that's what you want to have. And I think it would have worked, because they're terrified of the nuclear escalation. The people around Biden are terrified of escalation in general. And so any sort of escalation is, just something that would probably make them call Zelensky and say, hey, you have to stop this. He'd launch ICBM. Okay, but that doesn't count. I think the intended audience is, Biden and Scholz for that, because it's not a real escalation. That's not how you would do it. According to the doctrine, you would actually escalate from tactical nukes. So, okay, let me tell you how it would look like. It would look like this. There would be a tactical nuclear strike on something on the battlefield. So maybe a bridge with not too many people, or maybe a group of, just Ukrainian military people. but you wouldn't immediately jump to a strategic weapon, which is which is the missile used, Oreshnik, or people are saying it's Rubezh, not Oreshnik, but from what I've seen, it's definitely something that we haven't seen before, because the warheads were burning. It looked like they were burning, which would be consistent with hypersonic entry, because that creates plasma around the warhead. So you wouldn't see them necessarily like that if it weren't hypersonic. So there was definitely very likely what he said is true. What Putin said is true, and that's the missile used. I think we saw 5 or 6, I think 6 warheads. Of course, that's completely pointless. That missile is extremely expensive, and it's very pointless to use it like that. Even Putin had to justify it by testing, primarily. That's what he said in his speech. If you listen to that. But yeah, it was meant to, let's test the missile and let's scare the cucks in the West. Which I don't know if they achieved that or not. The US adjusted its nuclear doctrine recently, but I don't know if Oreshnik was something that was a factor in that. And of course, using it against Ukraine is kind of pointless, because you get every missile, almost every missile that Russia is using right now can be nuclear. Tactical nuclear. Kinzhal was designed to be nuclear from the very beginning, because the idea is use a mini nuke to hit things like large ships, decision making places, important targets. That was the whole point of the Kinzhal missile, was to be used like that. Of course, Iskander can be used, can be nuclear. Many of the H missiles, Hashki, can be nuclear. So kind of, what's the point? But yeah, didn't he hit a military base? No, he hit a Yuzhmash, which is a production facility. I don't think it was super active even. So I think their primary concern was probably to hit something that where not many civilians would die, because that would look bad. So they picked a target that's not very, I don't think many people died, or I don't know if anybody died in the attack. Those targets seem to, the warheads did seem to be nicely targeted, but I don't know if that's true or not. I think only the Russians know that, if they hit the targets or not. But overall, I think it was a successful test. Yeah, it's a mid-range. Yeah, it's a mid-range ballistic missile. It's exactly what it is. The whole point of this is that I think Ukraine wouldn't be able to effectively shoot this down. Those, the speeds that Putin quoted, which are hypersonic speeds, I don't know if on the video we saw speeds like that. I don't think we did. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriot can intercept some of the warheads. But the problem is, with these missiles, they're designed to work, they're designed to overwhelm the entire systems in general. So to start with, you have to use an anti-ballistic anti-air system, which Ukraine only has a couple of Patriot systems and some SAMPTs, but I don't know if they can intercept these. And so it's very likely they wouldn't be able to intercept at all. And then, of course, then the only way to get this missile before it separates would be to use something like THAAD, which is extremely, the terminal high altitude system, which is extremely expensive, needs like 100 people. And we don't even know if it would be effective against a missile like this. So that's kind of the point of the missile. So it would be very effective as a, I think, as an attack on the European targets. Ukraine, Ukraine already gets hit with everything possible. So, But I think it was more like a technical demonstration, because I don't know if you guys saw the speech Putin did. It sounded a lot like his old speeches about, wonder weapons. Oh my God, it's so amazing. We will tell the Ukrainians in advance, because there is absolutely nothing they can do in advance or when it happens to defend against the missile, because the missile is completely badass. You can't stop it. It's so amazing. It sounded like, when he made those speeches before the war, when he did those speeches about the Poseidon nuclear torpedo bullshit, or the nuclear-powered nuclear missile, the Burevestnik, and those crazy projects. So yeah, this sounded like one of them. But and there is some merit to this. I mean, this is a useful thing to have, but like, for Ukraine, it would be. I mean, for Russia, it would be useful if it was nuclear, and it's designed to be nuclear, because it's just way too expensive to be used any other way. The missile has to fly to the fucking space. Okay, so it's really expensive to launch it. So launching this missile for every for like any kind of bullshit, like, oh, there's a tank, or there's there's like field headquarters or something. I don't know. When you have a lot of other options that Russia already can use, so. Yeah, I think the primary purpose was to test if it works, which seems to do, and to scare the West into stopping the war, I guess, or freezing conflict. Do you see the war going nuclear is likely? No, I still think it's very unlikely. It's absolutely possible, but I think we would see way more warning signs. I don't count this as a warning sign. Again, let's be clear. I would count as a warning sign seeing that, okay, let's assume tomorrow in the news we see, okay, Russia is moving. The US intelligence says that Russia is moving their nuclear warhead supplies, the tactical nukes, okay? They're moving them to basically put on tactical missiles. Okay, yeah, that would be it. At that point, I would say, okay, well, we're going up the ladder of the nuclear escalation, and we're on the bottom step. And if they do use the tactical nuke, I think that's going to be a game changer for sure, because that's gonna create a precedent. So after that, there would be, like I said, it would probably be something harmless, like, oh, just a bridge, a tactical nuke with a very low yield that destroys the bridge. The area is radioactive for a couple of days, no big deal. You can walk around later, you're good. That would be a reasonable first step, because then, okay, well, you did this. The expectation is Ukraine will surrender, capitulate, stop fighting, or it was because it's what the US did with Japan. Because, well, okay, not exactly that. The US did a genocide scale attack as the first step, but I digress. So you would see that, and then when that would happen, you would see a reaction from the other nuclear countries. China would react, India would react, other nuclear countries would react, of course, in Europe, and Putin would wait and see what the reaction is. If the reaction would be cuck, or, oh, we're very concerned, then then you would wait for the Ukrainians to stop fighting. The Ukrainians would not stop fighting. Very likely it would be, some sort of an escalation from the Ukrainian side, if that's even possible. And then you would see probably a warning by Putin to, that maybe something closer to a city will be attacked with a nuclear weapon. Maybe still tactical. And then if nothing happens after that, then you would start to see the actual strategic nukes being used. And you would see thermonuclear weapons instead of these tactical weapons. You would see a megaton range instead of the kiloton range that's in the tactical nukes. Because Russia has detonated weapons during this war that are way more powerful, well, not way more powerful, but on the range where, you know, you would have a tactical nuke, very large bombs and so on. You wouldn't see a lot of difference between that and the the tactical nuke. But the megaton range, of course, would be something different. So you would have, you know, if that would hit a population center, even with the concrete buildings and the shelters and people sheltering and so on, you would still have a giant number of casualties, way more than we have ever seen. And that would truly be a horrible precedent for the world. And that is what we are talking about when we talk about nuclear war. That is what we're talking about. We're talking about a large city like Kiev or Dnipro or Odessa or Kharkiv hit by a tactical or multiple tactical nukes. I'm sorry, strategic nukes. And Ukraine wouldn't be able to defend against that because Ukraine doesn't have the facilities to intercept all of those, and Russia could easily use 100 missiles just because it has them. What would happen then is anybody's guess, honestly. How would Trump react to that? How would the neighboring countries react to that? How would Europe react to that? How would China and India react to Russia nuking a city? I don't know. But that possibility is definitely something we don't want to be in. And I don't think Russia wants to be in that place either. If we're considering that a little bit more, I strongly doubt that Trump would react with a nuclear response. Or I'm not even sure if there would be a response by the US. I think Trump has been very clear that he is very much concerned about, you know, the nuclear war and the nuclear escalation too. So I think his reaction would probably be limited. Would any other nuclear country respond? I don't think so. So yeah, Ukraine could be screwed and we would have a horrible precedent. Would Ukraine capitulate after that? Probably. I think it would. I think any president would say, okay. I think Zelensky's speech would be something, if Zelensky was alive, Zelensky's speech would be something like, well, the West has obviously abandoned us, and we are now at this point where we are getting nuked by Russia, and, you know, it would be completely responsible to continue fighting, understanding that, you know, potentially millions of civilians will get killed. Trump will start backing whoever rejects his peace proposal first. Or attacking. Do you mean backing or attacking? Attacking. Oh, okay. Well, Putin is almost certainly going to reject his proposal. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Whatever Trump wants to propose. So far, all of the options we've seen, to me, sound completely unacceptable to Putin. Because what Putin wants is ideally to, I think, divide Ukraine into parts. Keep, of course, what he has. Maybe make the central part neutral, that includes Kiev, and then let the the western part be Ukraine if it wants to, or join Poland or Hungary or whatever. I think that was kind of the plan from the very beginning, and I think they still remember this and want to do this. If Trump agrees to this in exchange for just stopping the war, well, I mean, he's the worst negotiator ever then, because like, what's the value of negotiations where you just say, okay, you know, like you can, because what Trump already said was, I want to stop the war, people are dying, that's all fine, but what are you going to get from Putin in exchange? Because Putin thinks he's winning. Putin thinks he just needs to push forward. He's going to get all of Donbass, and then he can wait it out, build things, and then maybe move forward and maybe do hybrid things against the Europeans. And, you know, I think he's in a bubble right now that may not be completely realistic, but that doesn't matter because, you know, it's important what he thinks. His perception is important. He thinks he's winning. And, you know, if you're looking at the East Front, he kind of is winning territory. That's indisputable. He has horrible losses, incurring horrible losses. Horrible, incredible numbers of people are dying in exchange for that territory, but he is getting the territory. That seems to be his goal, and he seems to be okay with the losses as well. The way Trump talked about it sounded more like a temporary ceasefire. Yeah, that's like that's my impression too. Yeah, because I think what Trump would like is to stop the fighting, which I think would be in Ukraine's interest. I don't honestly think it would be in Russia's interest to stop the fighting, because let's look at Russia. I mean, people are talking about Ukraine like, oh, they don't have enough people, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if you stop the fighting, the Ukrainians mobilize more people. The Ukrainians train their F-16 pilots better. The Ukrainians build more missiles. They build more drones. They get more money. The ceasefire would have to like block all of that, which is unlikely. That's going to be, happening. And on the Russian side, what do you have? On the Russian side, you have an overheating economy. You have very high military production that is basically driving the economy. So the productivity is mostly happening in the defense sector, which means if you stop the war, then those people are going to be either left without jobs, which would create an instant recession, or you have to keep building those weapons, which is more likely. And that means there will be more spending, and that means the economy will heat even more. So Russia is not in a good place economically or in terms of supplies. By most projections, their vehicle supply, which are the most vulnerable, I think, of all, the APCs, IFVs, BTRs, BMPs, they're going to be running out of that, of the Soviet ones, to be clear. The open air storages, they're empty. There's no more of those things, and their production capacities are nowhere near where they need to be by the rate of the loss they have on the front lines. So they would be able to defend, but I don't think they'll be in any condition to continue attacking like this after maybe spring next year. I think spring next year is probably, now they're at the peak of their capacities. Ironically, many people have joined the military now because Trump was elected. This is absolutely true. Many people have voluntarily joined the Russian military because you get a sign-up bonus, in some places almost $20,000, one-time instant money if you sign up. And people are thinking, oh, well, I'll cheat the system, I'll join, I'll get the money, and then Trump will stop the war. Which is pretty ballsy. I don't know if I would make that gamble, because you're tied into, you basically can't quit. So, good luck with that plan, I guess. But if you're very poor and don't have other options, that's an express way to middle class, man. So, So Russia doesn't have any personal issues right now, like Ukraine has. Ukraine has a lot of those issues, a giant recruitment problem. So Russia still has enough, tech and vehicles and bombs and aircraft as well. The aircraft are the Air Force is gonna have problems soon too, and it's already having problems. We saw recently, aircraft dropping just because of malfunctions, not because of Ukrainian actions, because they work so much, because they need maintenance, and then you have a number of flights you can do as a Su-34, and then you need a general repair. You need to basically rebuild the plane. For the most part, and those are working around the clock, and how long can you keep it up? The most projections tell us that it's going to be spring next year when Russia probably won't be able to do this level of intensity. They may try, They can still do the slow creep, but they will lose quite probably some of the components of that, which is at least vehicle attacks and possibly even the long-range bombing, because it's quite possible that there would be a counter to that by spring, because that's now the problem number one for Ukraine and the West and NATO and the US, is to counter the Russian combo, which is long-range strikes with using the glide bombs and the small infantry groups, trying to creep forward with large losses, but trying to creep forward after the aircraft do their job. And then a bunch of artillery as well, of course, drones and so on. The Russians also have a combo that has a very short kill chain. It's very effective with the Iskander missile, but that's expensive for them. This one, the first one, is not super expensive. Those glide bombs are not very expensive, so that works really well, and that can scale really well, and it scales really well in Donbass. The numbers of the bombs dropped are incredibly large, and so the Russians have been able to scale that up really well. But again, the aircraft will be the weak point in that. They will start to break. The Russians are not able to build a lot of them quickly. The pilots, it's just okay. Well, the pilots are not a problem because the glide bombs are extremely easy to use. So the pilot just needs to get to the coordinates and basically press a button, or his wingman presses the button, and that's it. But yeah, the aircraft themselves are going to become a problem in terms of maintenance, in terms of production. And of course, Russia is now using the armored vehicles intensively, and it's losing them intensively as well, especially in the Kursk Oblast. We will probably see another offensive there. Russia has not been successful in Kursk. The Ukrainians have retreated a little bit, but now they're holding pretty well. And the Russian losses have been incredible there, really, really bad. That's why we have the North Koreans there, because they need a little help. But I don't think that's going to help necessarily either. The Ukrainians will now get the landmines provided by Biden, so that's going to help with the small groups of infantry. I think that's going to slow things down a lot as well. And so yeah, it's going to, at the end of the day, at some point in time, probably early next year, it's going to be another stalemate. Right now, Russia has the initiative. Russia will probably keep the initiative, meaning it will continue striking in places it wants, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of success. However, by the end of the year, I think we will see a large retreat from Donbass. I don't see how anything can be different, honestly, unless something dramatically changes. I think we're going to see Ukraine lose a large swath of territory here. And quite possibly, I think Ukraine will retreat to the larger cities. Because you can't use the same tactics for the cities, obviously. I mean, if you want to, you can, but it will take many months to destroy them completely. So I think that's going to be probably the defensive move that Ukraine uses. And you will see these large swaths of empty territory possibly taken by Russia, I think. The train system is a little iffy lately too. The Ukrainian or the Russian system? So yeah, I mean the war is gonna end up in a. I think people who think that this is gonna escalate into a collapse of the Ukrainian defenses. I mean, okay, but it's gonna be very slow motion if that happens, and I think eventually Ukraine will recruit enough people to fight. If Ukraine is not able to do that, because those people are there and they can do them, but I mean, that is the biggest problem that Ukraine has, and they're trying to solve right now. I think what they're going to do is they're going to change the way they're trying to draft people and so on. And yeah, if that doesn't work, then they're fucked, because they do need people to fight. You do need people. this could be completely the advance at the front line on the in the east could be stopped by just more people, more artillery. And I think it's not about the weapons anymore. It's more about just not enough people there. The Russian train system having maintenance issues. Well, I mean that happens from time to time, but generally the train system I think is relatively robust. Those trains are, I think, domestic, and the railroad is generally resilient towards against attacks. It can be repaired relatively quickly, unless it's a bridge or something like that. So yeah, railroad is generally very resilient, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think where they're having problems with is the air transport, because they literally don't have an alternative. They tried to switch to domestically produced aircraft. That failed. They don't have the parts or the repair capacities to, I mean, they can do what Iran is doing, to try and repair them somehow through, parallel imports and things like that. But the problem is, I think the number of malfunctions is doubled or tripled, and that tells you it's obviously not going according to the plan. And we famously saw the landing in Siberia. I think it was some poor Indian people going to India or something. I don't know. But I remember these photos of terrified Indian people in like middle of Siberia, just flat snow, and then they were sleeping like in a like a gymnasium or something. That was pretty funny. Like at like a Russian village, middle of nowhere. Yeah, I think the aircraft are problematic. I mean, the domestic airlines, obviously. Some airlines, I think, are still doing flights. I think Serbia is doing flights, Turkey, obviously. So they have their own aircraft, and that's not an issue. But although I don't know how it works. Somebody who works for an airline, I think, knows probably. But I don't know if they do maintenance in Russia, or does this mean they can't do any maintenance in Russia, and so the aircraft has to be maintained at the home airport, or is it always maintained at the home airport? I don't know. But my point is the Russian airlines are having a problem. The Russian airlines are, because they can't do effective maintenance on the aircraft.
List of action points there. You mentioned Donald Trump. The US could quite possibly change its stance towards Ukraine once President Trump takes the reins next year. So is it...
The UK seems to be getting a little paranoid. Yeah, and also there was a very damning, I don't know if it was a report or an analysis or something, basically saying that the UK is fucked in terms of defense. The level of spending is nowhere near enough. The focus is all in the wrong areas, completely impractical, like, maintaining the aircraft carriers, things like that, because, rural Britannia or whatever. But actually, it's like, it's basically, the report basically says they bought a Lexus on a loan they can't afford. They have a shitty house and they bought a Lexus or something. So, yeah. And it's absolutely true. I think the UK military would definitely be no match for the Russians or even Ukrainians. Cybersecurity, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cybersecurity is a problem for, I think, all of Europe. I don't think any country probably does it really well, except maybe Ukraine. And Ukraine has had issues as well. I don't know. So when people talk about cybersecurity, as somebody who did cybersecurity professionally, there's a lot of there are a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of obscurity. We call that security through obscurity. There's a lot of tech that's intentionally obscure and not open for examination. Same goes for processes. And the problem with that is it's all great until the shit hits the fan, and then you realize, okay, this is completely inadequate. So I wouldn't be surprised if the US infrastructure would have a whole shit ton of places that nobody's thinking about, and that smart people from Russia or China or other countries would be able to exploit. Having said that, the amount of money that the US is pumping into cybersecurity means they have access to they can something that people don't realize is you can go to the dark web and you can buy exploits, right? Like you can log in right now and buy exploits. I don't know if that would be criminal per se. Don't do it, but you can totally do that. Like you can pay $1,000 and you can get an exploit that's, you know, maybe not 0-day, meaning, you know, there's no patch and nobody does it. Nobody has it patched. But maybe, you know, a lot of people have that issue and it's not super public, or the vendor is working on fixing the problem. And so the US, with having an virtually unlimited budget, can just go to the dark web and buy these en masse. So, meaning that if there's a bug in Windows, or if there's, and obviously there are bugs in Windows that Microsoft doesn't know about, that nobody knows about except those people who found the exploit, who found the vulnerability and built the exploit, and the US who bought the exploit. So we saw how this works with the Stuxnet back in the day when Israel did this, or the US, or both. When, you know, remember that virus, that malware that targeted the centrifuges in Iran? That used a whole bunch of, that's the first kind of piece of malware that we saw professionally made, undoubtedly professionally made, because it had all the trademarks of somebody who had a whole shit ton of money, because so many exploits were used, so many 0-day exploits were used that we never saw that before, ever. Because they're very valuable. So normally you wouldn't spend all of them on just a single piece of software. And that's exactly what they did, because they wanted it to succeed. So in that area, in offensive capabilities, the US is probably the best in the world. Probably not even a close second anywhere in China or Russia. But in terms of defense, in terms of protection and making sure their services work, while the US has complete control over the internet infrastructure, that is true, because most relevant companies are in the US. So that kind of gives them the natural advantage. But, you know, you can still hack things in the US and get away with that and cause damage. And it's really hard it's much harder to defend, obviously, especially if you're talking about the, you know, just random things that nobody's even thinking about, like I said. Read about that one, Fist Industrial Targeting Water or something. Yeah, well, yeah, it was designed to spread, but not actually do anything bad, unless it's on an Iranian centrifuge controlling computer. So yeah, that's not the most significant. That's not the most interesting thing about it. I guess it's interesting, but it's not the most interesting. Hey, Skeptical. The most interesting part is the way it's spread, like I said, is an overkill in 0-day exploits. So many. So just to get those exploits, because obviously Israel or the US didn't do their own research, most likely. I think they crowdsourced that to the dark web. And then they just go out and buy them because they have a lot of money. You know? And so they just wanted to make sure that Stuxnet can spread really fast, and that's what they did. And it achieved its purpose, allegedly. Why are the euros dooming again? The euro's the currency? Or it's ironically, I think euro is now over 100 rubles. I think the US dollar as well. I think you're talking about the Europeans.
It's realistic that gap can be closed, that will potentially be left if the US reduces or withdraws its support. Do you think that everything you've just listed can close that gap?
Well, look, if we get $300 billion worth of Russian frozen assets to help pay for the
There you
kind of
go.
defense
There you go.
investment that would sustain Ukraine's fight as long as it can, that's going to be a massive blow to Russian morale. If we actually give Ukraine and help co-develop with Ukraine the kind of advanced military
I'm entering into learning cybersecurity, so part of that was learning Stuxnet and oh, okay.
kit that
Hey, good for you. That stuff is interesting. I stopped doing that maybe 10 years ago, maybe more. Yeah, I used to do that I used to do cybersecurity for Microsoft systems, which is obviously very much in demand. But now I'm just doing DevOps and Linux.
that can degrade Russia's ability to fight in the way that it wants to fight, to reduce its advantages in electronic warfare, and to provide the kind of long-range precision fires that would really disable its.
I enjoy it. Yes and no. The interesting part is the technology and the social engineering, because you quickly realize the weakest part is the human, right? That's literally the easiest thing you could do. Like, just trick somebody into doing something stupid, or just call, hey, I'm the new system administrator. My name is whatever, Sean, whatever. There's a problem with your account. Can you just quickly give me your password? We just need to verify if everything is, which is showing up something. Just that's more effective. That's gonna work. It's not gonna work on everybody. It's not gonna work on most people. It's going to work on, if you do it like on 10 people, it will work for at least one, and then you have an account. And, nowadays, the networks are still very much trusting internally. I'm not seeing anything, although that's not, one of the concepts, apart from the layers of cybersecurity, you also can't trust the internal resources any more than you trust the external resources. And yeah, people, there's still a mindset of, oh, well, if they have an account, then they're good. And if they have an account, that means usually you're fucked. And the way to get that account is to social engineer. That works against many, many people. That worked against, obviously, the DNC. If we're talking about hacking, I worked against DNC. They got their emails, Hillary's emails. That worked against, I think, the Trump campaign as well, the Iranians. That's why Putin uses paper files. Yeah, I was telling this story when I was working for a financial services company and overseeing part of the, I guess, merger, yeah, for a Ukrainian bank, financial. So the group of companies that I was in bought a bank in Ukraine. And I was overseeing their integration, and I was talking to, and they hired a new security officer, like just security officer, overseeing physical and informational security. And that guy was from KGB, and he was like 60 years old. And one of the first things he said, well, yeah, we have to move to paper. Yeah, absolutely. Like for the confidential level, we have to make it paper. And he also asked every department to have a guy that would be an informant. He actually tried to recruit people from like every department. I swear I'm not lying about this or imagining it. I swear it happened. I was talking to this person. He was really old. He was like over 60 years old. And he was fired, I think, in a couple of months. But yeah, that's what he tried to do. So brilliant minds work alike. I remember him saying, like, ideally we we just wouldn't use email. Okay. Okay. Fired for waterboarding. I don't know what he was fired for. I think it's just I don't think it's necessarily even for these things. I think he was probably just unable to handle, technology, because I think he didn't really understand it well. But but it's absolutely true. I mean, if you're keeping things on paper, it's actually nowadays it's much harder to actually to actually get that information. So, you know, that.
Military machine, then yes, absolutely, we can fill that gap. We can't do everything the US can do, but what we can do would be enough to secure Ukraine and, crucially, to secure Europe.
You've been a critic.
I'm not at all sure about this. I'm not at all. He's saying it like it is a certain fact. I'm not at all sure. And I think if Ukraine would lose U.S. support, if the U.S. lost U.S. support, I think if Ukraine lost U.S. support, I think it would be a very, very defensive posture, and I think Kiev would be probably in danger of actually falling to Russia. And there's so many things that are important and critical, but let's just talk about the entire missiles. Russia is launching, I think on average, like 50 a day or something, long-range drones on Ukraine. Some of them are very cheap, but they still get shot down by Ukraine. Ukraine is trying to improve its, its entire economics by trying to identify those drones using cheaper ways to shoot them down and so on. Because if you're launching a very expensive missile on a drone that's much less expensive, then that's a losing game, even with the US support. And so if you remove the US support, which means losing Patriot as an option, because the US is providing Patriot missiles primarily right now. I don't think I think Europeans even have enough for Ukraine, would even be able to provide enough. If you're losing that, if you're losing your long-range capabilities, then what you're left is your short-range and mid-range. Mid-range is relatively weak already, and only a couple of systems that Ukraine has. Short-range is a little bit easier to supply, but you can't defend with just short-range anti-air. That's just not feasible, especially for larger cities. So what you would see way more of those drones hitting their targets, whatever the targets would be, or crashing into buildings, and civilians dying. It would be a very different picture than we have now, where the Ukrainians are kind of used to it, 50 drones, no big deal. Like, if any country would face a 50 drone attack, it would be a huge problem. Like, people in Kiev are, okay, the guys will handle it. And they do. But they handle it because they have a shit ton of missiles. And, they have a sophisticated system of notifications and blah, blah. But let's assume that goes away as well. Let's assume the US satellite data goes away as well. Because I guess that's what we're talking about. The Ukrainians would be fucked. The cities would suffer incredibly. Not even the front lines, because on the front lines you can't have the Patriot anyway. It's going to get destroyed in 5 seconds. So, okay. But the cities which get targeted continuously with cruise missiles, with drones, we would see devastation. That would be one of the, I think that would be one of the primary things that would happen if the US would pull out, is we would see the city, especially Kiev, air defenses collapse. And we would see those horrible pictures of, whole apartments blown up and, halves of buildings burning and people buried under the rubble and so on. Would that make Ukraine capitulate? No. How do we know? Well, we have the example of Nazi Germany, and people were supporting Hitler even during the worst bombings. That would be war crimes nowadays, but they weren't back then because that wasn't a thing. People still supported Hitler. That didn't reduce support. we all know about the the British attitude to air attacks. Nazi Germany tried to hit them with many things, long range primarily. They tried for air superiority. They weren't able to do that, of course, and then they tried for long range missiles, pioneering missile development in the process with the V1 and V2 missiles, which basically pioneered literally pioneered the missile technology. One cruise missile, the other one, I think, a ballistic missile. I think V2 is a ballistic missile, but could be wrong. Yeah. Missile. Yeah, world's first long-range ballistic missile. And you know what? Hitler lost the war anyway, so missiles don't win wars. It's not how it works. But that would be just very unfortunate because you would see civilians dying, which is what nobody wants. I don't think Russia wants. Then the dude went and did Apollo. Yes, Operation Paperclip had scientists who worked on the V2 missile. What was his name? Designer. Oh yeah, Von Braun, yeah. This fucking guy. I love the expression here, like, oh fuck. Yeah. The US had him work on. I mean, to be fair to the US, the US was working based on his work, but yeah, he definitely did help a lot. I love the career in Germany, American career, summary of SS career. That's one hell of a resume, huh? Yeah, that's a great way to. That's a great way. What is it? How did he die? Oh, kidney cancer. Awarded the National Medal of Science and Engineering. Von Braun had a charismatic personality and was known as a ladies' man. Hey. Oh man, this guy had it all. Hey babe, you want to see my missile? Oh yeah, of course. If you're doing this, the jokes write themselves. Like you don't have to even try. You don't have to even try because what you're working on basically is a phallic symbol. So yeah, of course he was. Those were the different times. Right in my rock. Yeah, of course. Good. Is this the Finnish guy? Yeah. Yeah, this guy. Yeah, I've read this. Yeah, this is pretty cool. And like I said in the beginning, I think skeptical you weren't at the beginning of the stream, but I was saying that some Ukrainians could change sides if the West abandons Ukraine. Like, what the fuck are we fighting for then? Like, fuck him. Like, at least let's join the Russians. Let's be fucking, like, what's the usefulness of the West then if they can't? Which, that's kind of the biggest argument against. Hopefully, we're not the only ones understanding this. Hopefully, somebody can explain this to Trump and to people like Scholz and other leaders, because you have to use really just basic second order thinking to understand. Okay, this is what's going to happen. Right?
critical of Germany's current policies. Can you tell us what Berlin should do to align more effectively with its European partners in supporting Ukraine?
Yes.
Oh, the no-brainer would be to provide the Taurus missiles. They could do that today, as far as I know, unless they're completely broken and not working at all, which is a possibility, knowing the Germans. But I mean, that's a no-brainer. How would Ukraine use them? I think Ukraine would use them to slow down the attacks on the in the east and to attack the airfields. I think it would be useful. It wouldn't be, wouldn't change the course of the war, but it would be very useful for the Ukrainians. What else could they do? I'm actually not sure what else Germany could do that would help Ukraine directly now. I think Germany is doing most of other things. So they're providing entire systems, they're providing missiles, they're providing armored vehicles, they're providing, well, they provide tanks already, but they're providing, they're building factories as well. Rheinmetall is building several factories, I think 4 factories, something insane like that in Ukraine. I mean, you could consider that Germany as well. So I don't know. I mean, maybe air-related things like long-range air-to-air missiles to try and hit those Su-34s. Maybe they can do that. I don't know if they're trying or considering doing that. I don't know if that would be compatible with F-16s or how that would even work, because I'm guessing it's compatible with what they're doing is what they're having is probably compatible with the aircraft that Germany's using, and Germany's switching to F-35s as well, or at least buying a lot of F-35s. Is there a high rate of desertion in Ukraine? Yes. Yes, there's a high rate of desertion. There's also a high rate of people who come back after a while because they feel ashamed. I didn't believe this. It's actually true. And they actually had to, just recently, they had to actually adopt a law to allow people to come back because it's so common. And then when you come back, you're basically going to go to prison anyway. Because if you desert the, your unit, and then you come back, you're kind of fucked, right? And so the new law says you can do it once and it doesn't count. They actually had to do it quickly because there's so many people who come back. But many people don't, of course, and they hide at home. They try to leave Ukraine. So yeah, this is extremely common, yeah. I believe those missiles have some sort of malfunction. Me too, yeah, me too. That's the Alcott post. A free pass, yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's real. Like I said, I didn't believe that it's so common. I thought it was, like Ukrainian propaganda or something. And then, no, it's actually a thing. Like many people just, and the reason is, well, the reason for desertion is they don't get enough preparation and they're forced into it. Like it's a very negative kind of mindset. And of course, they feel they're losing. So, you're not super motivated, obviously. You're forced into it, you think you're going to die, and then you get very little preparation. Not enough, absolutely not enough. I think, at a minimum, you would need a couple of months. I think they get a month at most. Some get less. What can you get for a month? Like, can you work at McDonald's effectively after a month of training? I don't know. Probably fuck up all the time. Yeah, some things don't require a lot of skill or training, but the problem is on the front line, you get scared by... The biggest problem in terms of training is adapting people to not get scared, not to freak out. And that's what happens most of the time. People just freak out because it's fucking terrifying to be on the front line. It's more terrifying than ever in the history of humanity, because there are fucking death machines hunting you down. There's multi-ton glide bombs able to strike at any time. You won't even hear them coming. That will, you know, cause a concussion or, you know, kill you guaranteed. It's terrifying. It's incredibly, it's horror. So people run away, and then they come back because they feel, I mean, people who do come back, they come back because, well, they feel bad. They feel that they betrayed their comrades. And that's the biggest factor. People sometimes think, okay, well, what's the, like, why does mandatory recruitment work at all? Like, how does that work? They force people into service. Like, is the officer going to shoot them if they all desert? No. They stick together. When they're at the front lines, their goal is to survive and to defend themselves. And you always think in those terms. I'm going to defend. I mean, if you're at that level, if you're like somebody else, if you're like, you know, like Trzecia Szturmowa, like the 3rd Assault Brigade, you probably, you know, filter people and select people who are, you actually want aggressiveness. But people who are, that we're talking about, those people are defending, and yes, they will kill people who are trying to kill them, but they are defending. They are trying to survive. And the way to survive is to, you know, to defend against people who are trying to get you killed. And then if you run away, you're letting your other, you know, your comrades down. And that's the glue that keeps people together and keeps people from deserting on the front lines. Watch the video. Can I show it on YouTube? They're gonna ban the channel? Oh, what the fuck? Oh, what the hell? Watch it anyway. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, these are FPVs. These are FPVs. It's a high-speed rotor. The sound is so high because it's a high-speed rotor. It's a racing drone. So... fucking death machines. Those are not even the worst things. Jesus Christ. How do these people have anything resembling a functioning psyche when they come back? I don't know. I'm a mentally stable, generally mentally stable person, or so I think. But I think I would be go absolutely insane after. I may not, you know, desert or anything, but it's impossible that this doesn't leave consequences on the way, on your psyche. And I'm not even talking about PTSD, just everything that you're seeing is just horrible.
Now, NATO members are to hold an emergency meeting with Ukraine next week after Russia attacked the eastern city.
Yeah, Baba Yagas are a big thing, yeah, for mostly for, of course, the Russians. Because the Ukrainians were able to. Those are, for people who don't know, those are the agricultural, very large, heavy drones that can carry a lot of stuff. And they can generally carry much more than the small mines that those Mavics or quadcopters carry. So they pack a punch, and they have a distinct sound, and I think the name is very appropriate from the Russian mythology, or Slavic mythology, I should say.
Of Dnipro with a new type of mid-range missile. Yesterday's strike was initially...
Let's wait for the first Trump speech. Yeah, I think what we're waiting for is for Trump to talk to Putin, because as far as I understand it, unless I'm mistaken, Trump hasn't talked to Putin so far. There was a leak that he did, then he denied that, and Putin denied it. Trump, Putin call. Donald Trump is already reshaping. The Kremlin said Trump-Putin call never happened. Peskov is so happy. This guy is completely, like, talk about a useless job. Like, this guy is completely useless. Like, whenever they ask him anything, oh, well, I don't know, we should ask the president. Oh, well, we don't know anything about that. The Kremlin has no information about that. We have no comments. Because Putin doesn't allow him to say anything. Pure fiction, fake news. Trump talked to Putin, told Russian leader not to escalate. So this is November 10. Bloch. Can I do this? I have an account on Bloch and Bloch. Okay. Fly123.com. Let's see if we have this. Oh, we do. Okay, I'll need to be more creative. Okay, I don't think this email address exists. Oh, something went wrong. Okay, let's try this. Something went wrong. Ah, because I think it knows the domain doesn't exist. Okay, let's try Microsoft.com. Something went wrong. Okay, well, I think this is the leak that people are talking about, but this is November 10th. Now it's November 23rd. Source says Trump advised Putin not to escalate. Kremlin denies. Okay, this is the same one. Russia denies. Kiev unaware. And yeah, they were saying Ukraine was notified. It's possible, I guess, that Trump is lying about it. And he told everybody to deny it. So, sounds like it didn't happen. Apparently talked to Putin during Biden's presidency. Oh, well, that's, yeah. Well, that's possible, I guess, yeah. Although I think the Russians denied that as well, no? I think they did. November 10. Yeah, but it's doesn't seem that it had actually happened. Everybody's denying it. I don't know why Putin would deny that. Unless Trump asked him to deny it. But Ukraine is also denying that they know about it, which they probably wouldn't know if it was like a secret call. I don't know what the purpose of a secret call honestly would be. Like, what would be the point of doing it like that? What would, like, you're not gonna achieve anything on the first call, obviously. Maybe tell Putin don't escalate until I get in the office. Well, that didn't work, obviously, because Biden escalated and then Putin escalated with the missile. So much for that call, I guess.
Thought to be an intercontinental ballistic missile, but the U.S. now.
I think it was an important call. Oh, it's just, hi, Vladimir. Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, just, you know, back in the old office again.
Believes it was an experimental weapon equipped.
But why make it a secret call then if it's not important? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Occam's razor didn't happen. I think that's the most reasonable assumption.
To carry conventional and nuclear warheads.
Security footage shows strikes raining down across the city of Dnipro.
No. Okay, this is not true. So they said it can carry both nuclear and conventional warhead. You can clearly see there's no explosion after hitting the ground. So the warheads were empty. They had to have the exact mass of the nuclear warhead, so it was something, you know, like metal or whatever. But and it had a lot of kinetic impact, obviously, but this was not. There was no explosion. You can see the fire. That's because presumably these vehicles were hypersonic, so they would burn, meaning they would create plasma around them. This creates an interesting navigational issue for the re-entry vehicles, because how would they target if they're hypersonic? So if everything that Putin is saying is true, this means there is a breakthrough. If these are precise. If these hit like random places, which is also possible, then I don't know if we need to worry about this, because, you know, more or less every country with ICBMs has this capability. At least the countries that have, you know, MIRV capability with the multiple independent warheads. And the problem would be that, well, you can't shoot this down, but it also wouldn't be able to correct its course easily. I don't know how they would fix that problem. This is, they call it the plasma shroud. It forms around you when you're moving at very high speeds in the atmosphere. Because of the, you know, the air, the friction creates plasma. The air goes into plasma, which is blocking a lot of things. It's blocking electromagnetic transmission, which includes light, but it also includes GPS. It also includes everything, radio communication. So interesting how they fixed this problem, because I don't think you can use the same trick that Kinjal and hypersonic cruise missiles are using, which is they break, they slow down, get their bearings, and then they speed up again. That's what they do. Or they just slow down before attacking, which is, you know, which is why they can be intercepted by the Patriot system, for example. But I don't think you can do that here. So it would be interesting to see how they solve this problem, because it's not a trivial engineering problem. Really interesting book. Oh, Bob Woodward. Yeah. Yeah, this is the one where he talks about this is the one where he talks about, I remember the conversation about the nukes, allegedly. The US got wind that I think in 2022 that Russia is planning to use the nukes, and then there was basically a threatening call by the US to Shoigu, by Pentagon to the Russian Ministry of Defense. And Shoigu said something like, "Don't threaten me," and then the I think who was it back then? Austin, or I think it was Austin. Said that, yeah, we're the US, we don't need to threaten or something like that. I hate those bullshit conversations. I don't know if it was even true, because Russia was denying that, but it's quite possible they considered a nuclear strike, because why wouldn't you? Like I said, if you're not considering China and India, who told you, hey, don't do it, then why wouldn't you consider that? I think it's a good option for Russia to escalate really quickly and just cuck everybody. You know. That fucking Biden is yeah, everybody says Biden is super potty mouth. He's a bad fucking guy. Netanyahu. Oh. Putin is evil. I think Putin thinks he's a good guy. I don't think Putin believes. Like all good villains, Putin doesn't think he's a villain.
Oh. Russia says it used a new weapon in the attack, calling...
So you can see these, you can see the... what you're seeing here are presumably the re-entry vehicles. It's not clear to me still. We haven't seen any evidence so far on, except what Putin said and what the Ukrainians reported. I haven't seen any evidence of this even being a single missile, because we don't know. But presumably it was a single missile with with MIRV capability, and then 6 warheads split on re-entry. Basically flies to space, falls down. But the the biggest feature of this specific missile is the hypersonic ability of the reentry vehicles of these warheads. Not technically warheads, but small projectiles that carry warheads. So they can accelerate as well and become hypersonic. Like I said, it would be interesting to see how they fix the plasma issue. But what we're seeing here is does support what Putin said. So these videos do support what he says and do support the capability. The only thing we don't know is if they actually hit the targets they want to hit, because they didn't announce the targets in advance. So if they said, okay, you know, like a good shooter does, okay, this is what I'm gonna shoot, like number 6 over there, okay, or in pool, right? That's what I'm going for. And if they did that and then they hit that, well, that would be impressive. They didn't do that because, of course, they didn't, because they're pussies. So we don't know if they hit the targets or not. My guess would be that they did not. I would almost assume that by default, because, like I said, it's extremely hard to make. It's not hard to make them hypersonic. It's not hard to make them hit that general area, but it's extremely hard to make them precise. Because the maneuverability when you're hypersonic is extremely limited. So, and this is a nuclear weapon after all. So why would you even be precise? What's the point? What's the point of like hitting 500 meters, you know, left or right of your target? You're going to evaporate the target anyway.
Calling it an Oreshnik ballistic missile.
And the name is just hilarious. And in Russian, it's a Nutter missile. Like, I don't know. Oreshnik is just the most ridiculous name for a missile I've ever. Orech is a nut. Yeah. Why did they call them? Even Putin smiled when he said, "Well, that's what they called it." Like, not great branding. Okay, you should call it something fucking badass, like they call the nuclear powered missile, the nuclear powered cruise missile, the nuclear powered nuclear cruise missile, I should say. Call it Burevestnik. That's a great name. That's wordplay in Russian. It's a bird that's announcing a coming storm. It means literally storm teller, storm notifier. So let's say it's like a bird name, but it's actually, you know, ominous, and it's a great name for a missile. That's one of my favorite names. Oreshnik, not so much. Whoever thought of that name should fucking get demoted.
Damage from the strike was limited, but Russia's claimed weapon of choice appears to send a clear statement.
Yeah, so you can see that the damage is obviously just kinetic. So just a very, very fast, very heavy, you know, object fell through your roof. Like, there's no explosion, you know.
A mid-range ballistic missile is capable of carrying nuclear warheads and typically has a reach of between 3,000 and 5,500 kilometres. While it's yet to be confirmed if that was what was fired, the attack came up.
Yeah, that's the problem, because we don't see, like, this doesn't have enough, like what we're seeing here doesn't have enough capacity to, you wouldn't be able to put, this wouldn't be able to be MIRV capable, because it doesn't have enough space for 6 independent vehicles. So it would have to be something bigger. People thought initially it was the Rubezh, which is a old school ICBM giant fucking thing. If it's this, then it was 6 of these, and then it's a completely different thing. If it was 6 of these, yeah, sure, I could believe that. Incredibly expensive, completely useless, but yeah, that's believable.
After Ukraine was given permission to launch missiles supplied by the UK and US into Russia.
I guess the NATO meetings are not televised. Even the Rammstein meetings, or which ones? I don't think they televised them, no.
President Vladimir Putin says Moscow could strike military installations of any country whose weapons are used against Russia.
The Oreshnik missile systems are being tested in combat conditions in response to the aggressive...
Oh, there's a weird thing here that somebody noticed. You see his hands? There's this weird cutoff here. It looks like they edited the hands to make them still. There's like an issue there. It could be completely made up and he just held his hands very still, but he almost never does. So I just remember seeing this. Putin, obviously, you know, he's an old man. He has 500 diseases like Joe Biden. He seems to be in a better shape than Joe. But he definitely does have some sort of a neurological disorder, because we saw him, like, he moves his feet a lot when he sits. He grabs desks and tables real hard, as if to, maybe his hands are shaking. But there's a neurological issue. I don't think it's anything, you know, to worry about. It's just I think it would look bad on TV, and so they had to edit. I think somebody confirmed that the video was edited as well, because you can kind of tell, but I don't know, it could be made up too.
Aggressive actions of NATO countries.
But you can see that he's not moving his hands at all. Like, he's moving his body a little bit, and then the hands are not moving at all, 1 pixel, which is kind of weird. Like, if you even tried to do that, I don't think you would even be able to.
Against Russia. The question of further deployment of medium-range and shorter-range missiles.
Or he gripped, like, or he, like, is actively pushing so that they're not moving. But you can't, like, I don't know how I would be able to do this.
Will be decided depending on the actions of the...
And then the tie, there's like a weird cutoff here. And maybe it's because of the tie pattern, but it almost looks like they cut using like a selection tool. They cut the hand here, and it sucks because the tie moves and there's a pattern on the tie. Yeah, it looks like an editing job for sure. I didn't pay attention to this before, but it does look like an editing job here. Which my guess would be the hands were shaking visibly. I don't think just moving the hands would cause them to do this.
The US and its allies.
Like, they're literally not 1 pixel is moving. It's not, this is not natural. They look like fake hands.
The targets to be hit during these further tests of our latest missile systems will be determined on...
You see how they're like completely mobile. Wow, this is super weird.
...the basis of threats to Russia's security.
But, you know, he may be able to hold his hands perfectly still. I don't know.
Russia issued a new doctrine this week to allow for a potential...
It's funny, he stood up and the hands just stayed. Like outtakes. That would be amazing. Does the static image start at his elbow? I don't know where it starts, yeah. I think probably at the black area. Because that's where you would hide the transition, right? So yeah, probably I would be guessing it's like this maybe. Or maybe even, yeah, because this part is not moving at all. I wonder if the reflection, let's try and take a look. Just frame by frame. Let's see if things are moving. Yeah, the reflections are not, his head is not reflecting, so we don't have any reference for. And I'm seeing, you see a little movement here? Like, it's definitely his upper body. And then it completely stops here. So this is moving, this is moving. And then this is not moving at all. So I think this area is kind of photoshopped. This area right here, like this, maybe. Right here. You can even see like a weird, you can almost see a line here. Like, this is where you would probably, you see like a smudge. It looks like a little smudge. I'm sure it's just a suit, but this looks like, yeah, this is where you would probably cut. Right here, and then just this part is basically like a static image, and the rest of it, yeah. Very likely. I mean, just doesn't look natural. Oh my, by the way, did you see the phones in the background? Old school, like grandpa phones. And the big one, like the secretary phone. I mean, okay, I'm sure Joe Biden has something like this too, and I'm sure it doesn't have a computer either.
Russia issued a new doctrine this week to allow for a potential nuclear response to an attack on Russia by any nation that is supported.
The crease on the elbow? Yeah, that's where it seems to... Yeah, the crease seems to be like the border of the... Joe Biden doesn't use any of that modern shit. Yeah, the phones, you mean, yeah, of course. Because he never liked them. He told Bell when he invented the phone, you know, Alexander...
by a nuclear power. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Thursday's strike was a sign that Putin has no interest in peace.
Yeah, so there's definitely an explosion here. You see the chart trees. But this, I think, came from the plasma. I mean, maybe on the video we don't see any explosion, but I think this is just a shock wave. Yeah, it's almost just a shock wave, because I'm not seeing a lot of burning either.
Our crazy neighbour once again showed what he really is and how he despises dignity, freedom and human life in general, and how afraid he is.
The word crazy in Ukrainian is bozhevilny, and it literally means free from God. Like, God has no control.
He is so afraid that he uses new missiles and he searches the world for other places to find weapons in Iran, in North Korea.
Zelensky called for strong worldwide condemnation of the attack, which marks a clear escalation in the nearly 3-year war. He says a lack of reaction would send a message that
Yeah, telephones, exactly.
Russia's behaviour is acceptable.
Joe just sends telegraphs when he needs to.
Well, not...
Fuck, telegrams. I sound like a zoomer. Oh no, I sound... Wait, telegraph is the machine. Telegram is what you send, okay? Right? Yeah.
Natalie Sabanadze is a senior research fellow at Chatham House. That's a European think tank. She's a former Georgian ambassador to the EU. Welcome to DW. Is Russia really threatening to target NATO countries?
Yes.
Well, what Russia is
Did her mug just fall down or something?
doing right now is signaling, and the purpose of this signaling is deterrence. Its main objective is to deter continued Western support for Ukraine. And Russia wants to do it.
Biden cracked the enigma with the Polish.
By maintaining escalation dominance. That has been a tried and tested.
I honestly think so. Yeah, signaling, sure. I mean, you can say that, but I think the primary usefulness of this for Russia is just to test this new missile. I mean, honestly, just it's an invaluable thing to do that, because it's one thing to shoot it at your own territory, right? Which they did, I'm sure, countless times, but or maybe they didn't. I don't know. Many times, because, well, it's expensive, first of all, but to fire it at an enemy who, you know, has jamming, navigational jamming, and long-range anti-air defenses as well is, you know, is a very useful test. So I think that's the primary value for Russia, for sure. Okay, so these are not MIRVs. Almost certainly these are just 6 independent missiles.
Tested approach by Russia. It has tried to always escalate, and by doing this, discourage the West from escalating proportionally, and by doing this, kind of achieving deterrence effect. we have to see this, as your commentary noted, in coordination.
I have to look this up. Wait. Probably everybody's reading this article. 4 hours ago, I updated Hazel Tree. Yeah, so it's an upgrade from Rubiège. But Rubiège is a very different missile, so... the Russian could reportedly use a MIRV payload. But... this is ability to launch multiple warheads differentiated from other nuclear-capable missiles. Cannot be detected in its travel through the upper atmosphere. I don't know how it wouldn't be able to. You could, I mean, systems like THAAD, I think, can do this. Okay, so there's a lot of conjecture. 6 warheads reportedly equipped with 6 submunitions. Doesn't look like we have any reliable information.
Or as a package with the upgrading of the nuclear doctrine, because Russia has been rather unhappy with the deterring effect of its nuclear weapons. So upgrading of this doctrine was another attempt to send a signal to the...
What happens if Putin decides to use a tactical nuke in Ukraine? That NATO countries will start using... No, NATO countries would almost certainly not use nukes. First of all, NATO countries don't have the same doctrine like Russia has. Russia has a much larger emphasis on tactical nukes. The nukes are not separate from other weapons in the Russian doctrine necessarily. The strategic nukes are, so megaton range, but tacticals are not, which means that generally you should escalate. I think in the Ukrainian war, this should have happened many times so far. And the only reason why this didn't happen is, well, Russia didn't want to use them for certain reason. Were they scared by the US? Were they scared by the, Chinese warnings about it or whatever? But yeah, it should have happened. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised by a tactical nuclear use. That would be something that would be very logical to use because the West is terrified of tactical nukes. And there would absolutely be no nuclear response to that from the West. The US even said that. Would there be an attack on Russian assets? Maybe. I'm not even sure if that would happen. The US allegedly has said that it would potentially target Russian assets not within Russia. So think like, Russian bases in Syria, Russian assets in the, naval assets like the Black Sea Fleet, the Pacific Fleet, things like that. But I don't even know. I mean, that sounds like the level of escalation that Biden would probably be against, and people around Biden would probably be. So my guess is not much would happen. Maybe they would provide something like some more weapons to Ukraine. Maybe Germany would provide towers or something like that. I don't know. But I don't think it would be anything significant. NATO will most certainly strike back. I don't think so, Skepticola. I don't think almost certainly. I don't think that applies. I don't know. That would have to be tested. Did they say they will? Maybe they did. But would they? Like, look at the people. I mean, we're talking about people like Scholz and Biden, and then NATO includes countries like Hungary. Would Turkey strike with? I don't think so. So maybe some countries would, like maybe Poland would, on its own initiative. Maybe the US would, but again, they would strike something like the Black Sea Fleet, and it would even be indirect. And yeah, I just don't have a lot of faith in the NATO response, unfortunately. From a NATO country by giving more weapons to Ukraine. I think they would give more weapons to Ukraine. I would think they would let Ukraine almost certainly. So you could potentially see okay, you see a tactical nuke, Biden would maybe allow Tomahawk missiles to be used by the Ukrainians, you know, or would provide something that would be painful for Russia. Maybe something that would neutralize. Maybe something that would neutralize the air advantage that they have. Like the latest missiles for the F-16s. Something like that, or AWACS support for the F-16s or something. But it would totally be a cuck move. It would be a very, very passive-aggressive thing. I think Turkey wouldn't strike with cruise missiles to Russian bases in Syria. Why would they? Like if Turkey would, if Russia would attack like a bridge in Ukraine with a tactical nuke, why would you think Turkey would strike a Russian base in Syria? Well, Turkey might independently. I mean, I understand that. Oh, I mean, yeah, no, Turkey would go with that, yeah. But I don't know if NATO would have the balls to do it, is what I'm saying. Because, I mean, like it or not, the US is leading NATO, and if the US said, yeah, you don't want to escalate, we want to do something symbolic, but maybe there would be a strike against like a base in Syria. Maybe. It's conceivable. I'm sorry, I just don't have a lot of faith in that. But that would be a huge threshold to cross. I mean, it would be the first nuclear use, tactical or not, but it would be the first use of nukes since Japan in a war. So that would be a huge, big fucking deal. We're assuming Trump is in power. Well, no, I'm actually considering Biden in power. Trump, I have no idea. Trump is like super unpredictable, which is why I think Putin is terrified of the scenario, because he could cock unexpectedly, but he could also strike really hard unexpectedly. And he did strike, like, remember the Hasham massacre? We can call it that, I guess. The Hasham attacks was the US military against the Russians, technically against Wagner. Happened under Trump. Trump was Mattis authorized that strike, and that was totally. I mean, yeah, they pretended that's not the Russians, but whatever. So it's not like Trump is not able to, or Cox, and let's not. Maybe we could accidentally hit. I'm pretty sure if Biden was there, that Biden's Secretary of Defense wouldn't authorize that attack. I don't know. I may be biased against Biden. I'm sorry. Biden did some things too, but it was. I mean, Trump is perfectly capable of escalating. He's no stranger to escalation. Trump killed Soleimani. Like, he's the one who did it, not Biden. So, you know. Maybe Putin wanted to play that card before talks I had with Trump. Yeah, that's a good point. But you know, he didn't. This would be a logical thing to do after the ATACMS authorization that Biden did. It would be a very logical thing to use a tactical nuke to destroy a bridge. Russia needs to destroy quite a lot of bridges. You know, Russia has, like, because those bridges are supplying the Ukrainians on the east. It would be very, 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 very extremely useful to strike a bridge in Ukraine with something like an Iskander, nuclear Iskander or nuclear Kinjal, and they didn't do it. Because this is not a nuclear escalation. The fact that they used a mid-range hypersonic ballistic missile, that's not an escalation. That's just, we're using a missile that can carry nuclear warheads, and it sounds scary because people hear, it's an ICBM, which is not, it's a mid-range ballistic missile. It's hypersonic, it carries multiple warheads, so, okay, it can be nuclear. Iskander can be nuclear, Kinjal can be nuclear, many of the H missiles can be nuclear, already used all the time, daily almost. So if they wanted to, I think they would have. This would be the perfect opportunity. I was actually waiting for this to happen. Maybe not, obviously not hoping for it to happen. But this was one of the things that was kind of, mentally prepared to kind of, expect. Which is Russia saying, fuck it. Biden is escalating. We have to stop it. And we have to hit hard. And just use, like I said, use a Kinjal or Iskander to hit a bridge in the east, somewhere where there's not too many people. It's going to be radioactive for a couple of days, no big deal. But you cross the nuclear threshold, and then you see how China reacts, how India reacts. Do they still keep trading with you? Do they still keep... Because if China told them, yeah, we're going to stop trade, like, we're going to impose sanctions if you do this, Russia is fucked. Like, if that happens, Russia is fucked. China can single-handedly stop this war just by saying, okay, Russia, by tomorrow, you're not gonna get any more drone parts, and you're not gonna get any more cars, you're not gonna get any more of our shit. Your companies, you're gonna close all of your accounts. You're fucked. Like China can stop the North Korea thing. Like, they can say, okay, well, you're on your own. Count the days till the date that North Korea collapses completely. Like, China can single-handedly destroy North Korea, and China can single-handedly stop the war. Because Russia has made itself completely dependent on China. And so if that conversation, and we covered that on the stream, that visit of Xi to Moscow, there was a speech afterwards. It was supposed to be a joint speech. That joint speech did not happen. There was supposed to be a joint statement. That did not happen. That means they weren't able to approve the joint statement. That means there were disagreements. So what I think is China wanted to add the territorial integrity thing, which they keep saying and keep repeating. Most people ignore this. I don't think they should. China keeps saying we should respect the territorial integrity of countries under the UN. You know what that means? That means, yeah, you can't annex territories, number one. And then China says, yeah, we shouldn't use nukes. Absolutely not allowed escalation to use nukes, to go to the nuclear level. They keep repeating, they keep saying that every single time. What about Taiwan? Well, Taiwan is even by the US, it's a one China policy. So Taiwan is definitely not the same thing as annexing. Yeah. The US is not recognizing Taiwan as a separate country. It's being treated as an entity that should have autonomy, and most of the world kind of treats, Taiwan the same way. But I mean, it's, one China policy is part of the US policy. The official US policy is that. So not part of the UN. I don't actually know what's the status of Taiwan and the UN. Let's see. Look at status of Taiwan. Okay. Initially excluded from the United Nations favor of Taipei, Beijing has gained increased recognition. So yeah. Republic of China has formal diplomatic relations with only 12 nations. And yeah, everybody else is informally kind of recognizing them. So yeah, it's a very different thing. Throughout the 50s and 60s, the United Nations and most communist nations still recognize the Republic of China, meaning Taiwan. Non-communist nations referred to CCP controls Red China. Yeah, but it's one China. It's not You can't recognize Taiwan and China at the same time. And then the UN General Assembly voted to move China from Republic of China to PRC. United States recognized Kuomintang government in Taiwan. RC itself, blah, 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 until 88. Most nations have switched their official diplomatic recognition of China to PRC. And then they don't define China. Okay, so it's a loophole. But yeah, it's a very different thing than just annexing other people's, because the territorial integrity, it's a different thing, because what happened was there was a civil war, and they insisted, oh, we're the real China. No, we're the real China. And it's a very different situation, because this is a much more of an old school invasion that the US was created to prevent. With Taiwan, it's very blurry. And of course, everybody supports, well, not everybody, but people do. Many countries, most countries, I guess, support some sort of autonomy for Taiwan and a nonviolent resolution of the conflict, and I hope that's going to happen. Because the status of Taiwan is kind of ridiculous, and the stuff they have to go through to just get by it's pretty ridiculous, because it's very unofficial. It's very, even if you look at the U.S., it's very the U.S. doesn't recognize Taiwan. It does, but it doesn't. What is China is not defined. Still no progress in Chasiv Yar. The Russians are in Chasiv Yar, but it's not fully controlled by the Russians. That's what you mean. So yeah, there's progress. I don't know if Deep State updated, probably not. Oh, they did. Yeah, this is pretty much up to date. I don't think there are other changes. Yeah, maybe a little bit further to because when you do this, you get hit from all sides and you have a lot of losses. So the Russians are very vulnerable here. But because you can hit the supply line. But I think that's more or less accurate.
Yes, absolutely. The key problem lies at the very top and at the very strategic level, where Olaf Scholz.
So people say the Russians are definitely in the administrative center of Chasiv Yar, yeah. And they're there to stay. I don't think the Ukrainians are going to kick them out. I think it's going to just get worse for the Ukrainians in there.
Scholz has not committed to supporting Ukraine to win. He has not yet said, after 1,000 days of full-scale war, that Ukraine...
Like I said, I would expect, unless if the current trend continues, I would expect that the Ukrainians are going to eventually retreat to cities. Because what's going on right now is not sustainable for the Russians and the Ukrainians. But I think the Ukrainians will have to do something radical, which is to just give up a lot of territory. I think what's going to happen here is I think they're going to give up a lot of territory. I think they're trying to make it as expensive as possible for the Russians. But I think that's probably going to happen unless Russians start running out of something, people, tech, ammo, whatever. If that happens, then yeah. Maybe the Ukrainians are hoping for that. That's not the best strategy, but, waiting for your enemy to run out of ammo. But like I said, Ukrainians have a lot of problems with generating enough people for the numbers they need. So until that's fixed, that needs time. And we discussed why this problem was created, and this problem was completely self-inflicted by the Ukrainians. It's not, you're going to see coverage, oh, Ukraine is running out of people. No, that's not happening yet. Ukraine has not people for at least a couple of years of fighting, but Ukraine has done an extremely dumb thing and counted on voluntary recruitment until that stopped happening, and then the actual draft was completely unprepared. So, when push came to shove and they had to do it by force, they fucked it up completely, and they're doing the worst possible job they can. in terms of corruption and in terms of just horrible videos that are getting generated daily by people picked up on the street. And it's just really, really bad. Just very poorly handled, huge failure. Having said that, there's still people left, and there's enough people to defend. The thing is, will they be able to generate enough recruits to be able to stop the Russians from advancing further? Because so far, the Ukrainians are not able to stop the Russians anywhere except Kursk. That's the only exception. So this area, paradoxically, within Russia, that's where the Ukrainians are successful in stopping them. So far, there's going to be a large attack, probably combined Russian and these new North Korean forces. But so far, the defense here is pretty successful. That's always until it's not. So we'll see. Like I said, Trump's silence is disturbing, raised a lot of questions. Well, I don't think Trump has a plan still. Trump also hasn't appointed a person who would be actually handling Ukraine so far as I know. Nobody has been appointed. People have been floated, but there was a Russian guy, Russian Jewish person floated as the representative. I think that didn't go through. His name was, I think... was it Bernstein? Oh, I don't remember the last name, but it was it Epstein? I think it was an interesting last name. But that guy didn't go through. I don't know who's going to be appointed. So
Ukraine should win and Russia should lose. And that has governed then the strategy going down, which has seen Germany send a significant amount of money, a significant amount of heavy weapons. But what all this has amounted to, without that commitment to win, is in effect an expensive way to make Europe less safe, because it's not enough for what Ukraine needs. And it's not enough for what partners need or expect from Germany either. And Germany can send more weapons. It could send more money. It could invest in these defense technologies. It could send Taurus missiles without targeting restrictions, as has been proposed by the...
Yeah, this is a no-brainer. Now that Biden has already escalated, you can, I don't know why they're not doing this, but it could be just that, Scholz is firmly believes that this is going to trigger Putin somehow. I'm sure there's a reason, and I'm 100% sure that the reason is absolutely dumb. Like, it's the dumbest possible reason you can imagine. So that we can ascertain, that we can assert without a doubt that the reason why the Germans are not providing a Taurus missile is extremely dumb and has nothing to do with reality. We are absolutely certain about that because we have seen the German arguments before for not providing things. I'll give you an example. We can't provide the Leopard tanks because they have the German cross on them, and then the Russians will see the German cross, and their genetic memory will wake up. I'm paraphrasing, but this is what they said. Their genetic memory will wake up of fighting the Nazis, and that's going to be really bad. Or they're going to see German tanks killing Russians, and their genetic memory is going to... That's literally what they were quoting as the argument. So there's no good reason for not providing the Taurus missiles. Absolutely, 100%.
By the opposition leader, Friedrich Merz. But also, it could stop blocking...
They already said that. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Common EU defense funding that would help Europe truly defend itself.
And of course, immediately when the Leopards came to Ukraine, of course, they were repainted with, of course, the, again, Ukrainian, insignia. But, of course, the Ukrainians immediately started to meme, leopards with crosses and fucking German music. And poor Scholz probably had a heart attack.
And it's a real reputational issue for Germany now that it's become seen as an unconstructive blocker at the EU and NATO level.
Which it absolutely is.
And Olaf Scholz's latest action in calling Putin undermining
Oh my God, I even forgot about that. We didn't talk about it. Oh my God, that calling. Jesus Christ, how much of a cock can you be? How big of a cock is it possible humanly possible to be? To do that? What possible value could you get from calling Putin like a bitch? Like, you're not, like, you don't have the authority to negotiate. You don't have to, like, there's no the only dumbest thing was Orban going to Moscow. Okay, but Orban, okay, you understand, right? Okay. Getting a lot of money, that's fine. Scholz? Jesus Christ, what a giant pussy that man is.
The isolation of Russia hasn't helped that at all.
You mentioned the ATACMS. Obviously, we've been reporting in the last 24 hours that the US has now authorized ATACMS missiles for Ukraine to be used against Russia. Do you see European nations, do you see Germany stepping up now with similar contributions?
No.
I certainly think they should. I don't think under Olaf Scholz it's going to happen. And other German...
Yeah, until while Scholz is there, while Scholz is in the office, it's not going to happen. The dude was a fucking young socialist of Germany. He fucking advocated against NATO and advocated against US imperialism. What do you want from this man? This man is a communist. A peacenik communist. What do you want from this guy? Like, he's being himself. I don't know what people expect from this guy. Like, Jesus Christ.
And leaders need to really consider what that does, not only to European security.
But still, I mean, even, like, I don't know. Can you imagine, like, somebody like Bernie Sanders in a similar situation calling Putin? I don't think so. But Bernie shit talks Putin, by the way, all the time. So Bernie has the balls. It's it's not the socialism that makes you pussy, okay? That's completely separate from it's the
security, but also to their country's position, to Germany's image, to its reputation, as well overall to German security. But let's be very clear, even though Joe Biden has now authorized the use of these ATACMS, this is very much a day late and a dollar short, because they are still limited in where they can be used.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Because he's fucking Joe Biden. He can't do anything right.
And we haven't actually yet seen the kind of permissions and munitions given to the Ukrainians that could really help degrade Russia's war machine. So we haven't truly yet got serious.
True. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
About this. Now, a change in the German position on that would make a big difference around Europe. But frankly, others aren't waiting to see what Berlin's going to do. They're going to move ahead at their pace.
Estonia is going to show them, and Latvia and Lithuania, they're going to fucking... No, I mean... countries like Poland, honestly, are worried about themselves and their own existential threat that Russia is posing. They gave a lot of stuff to Ukraine already, so the only thing they would be able to give now would be soldiers, and they're kind of out of everything else. It's, like I said, the Baltic countries are a joke in terms of their potential. The Scandinavian countries are super helpful. Denmark gave all of their anti-air, I think, systems to Ukraine, which is very rational, very reasonable. But who else is there? I mean, okay, the UK, Europe is a bunch of countries who have relied on the US to protect them, thought that the war would never happen. And they're now shitting their pants. Most of them seriously considering cucking to Putin because he's strong and they're not. Seeing that the US support is going away. So, I mean, if Europe is Ukraine's only hope, I don't know. I wouldn't be super optimistic. Individual countries, sure, you can count on individual countries. But Europe as a whole, Germany in particular, maybe. I mean, it's definitely possible, especially now when things are changing. In Germany, it's possible that, that posture will change. And there are people advocating providing towers to Ukraine. There are people advocating providing more. But there are also people advocating for cutting aid completely. So we'll have to see what happens. What's almost certain is that Scholz is going away. That's almost certain. So when that happens, there will be change for sure. And then what that change will be, Ukraine has to survive until then, I guess.
Benjamin, we haven't got much time left, but I did just want to ask you about the fact that, critics are arguing Ukraine's...
Turkey is going to declare war. Turkey should just do a Chad move and just annex Crimea. Just declare, not actually go in there, just annex Crimea. Because, hey, you see what, Russia, based on their historical arguments, annexed, part of Ukraine that it doesn't even control, like Zaporizhia, and so based on historical arguments, we just annex Crimea, and you don't do anything about it. You just so now you have to negotiate with Turkey about Crimea. Yeah, we have to do something because you annexed it, but we also annexed it, so that'd be a kick-ass move. I could totally see Erdogan doing that. But he likes Russian money more than that, I think. Although, I don't know. Erdogan fucks Putin all the time behind his back. Or even not behind his back. So I don't even know. That man is a Chad.
Military.
Or not. But yeah, it would be a kick-ass move.
Goals, particularly reclaiming...
Just piss off Ukraine and Russia. Hey, no worries, Ukraine, we'll just get annexed. That's no big deal. It fixes a huge problem. You don't have to attack down south anymore. You can focus on other things. We just shortened the front line for you.
Crimea may be overly ambitious. Can I ask you what you think?
Everybody keeps saying this. I don't know what they... Crimea is... Let's repeat it all together, okay? Militarily, Crimea is the most vulnerable piece of territory that's in play. The most vulnerable piece of it. That doesn't mean Ukraine will be able to go in and capture it. That means it's not super easy, obviously. Ukraine was able to do it. But everything else is even harder. So attacking Crimea in terms of cutting off the infrastructure to Crimea, forcing Russia to disproportionately spend on defending Crimea because it's a pain point, is just very, very reasonable. And that should be priority number one for Ukraine. If Ukraine is considering attacking, which I think it will, maybe end of next year, if the war is still on, because until then, Ukraine will not be able to perform anything significant other than maybe some surprise incursions and things like that. But definitely not coming close to endangering Crimea, that's for sure.
Think about that.
I think we have to think about what happens if Ukraine doesn't take back Crimea, that it sets a precedent that you can change borders by force. You, embolden and reward Russia's aggression. That sets a terrible precedent, and it puts Europe...
Let's remember, boys and girls, Obama did shit when Putin annexed Crimea. He was all badass about, there would be costs. What costs, dude? Like, you place sanctions on Crimea territorially. So, you can't use your Visa cards in Crimea. Oh, no. And you placed individual sanctions on Russia. Okay, it hurt. Yeah, Russia can't build chips. Yeah, sure. It hurt their military production, and we're seeing some results of that. That's nowhere close to the response that was needed back then. That's where That's that appeasement, that non-existent red line, which let's again remember, Obama did the similar red line in Syria, and then nothing happened either. That's what emboldened Putin. Would Trump have reacted differently? I don't know. Probably. I honestly don't think so, because he was kind of excited about Putin attacking Ukraine. Oh, super brilliant move. Amazing move. Yeah, he's awesome. I think Trump's thought would be, oh, maybe we can annex Mexico. Can we annex Mexico? Russia annexed Crimea, or Canada. Can we do that? I think that would be where Trump would go with his thinking, not stopping Putin, but let's just split the world between Russia and
in greater danger. Now, it may be that for some time a settlement could be reached that doesn't actually give Ukraine back all of its lawful territory for now, but in the long run, that has to be the aim. Otherwise, we face a less secure Europe.
Benjamin Tallis, Director of the Democratic Strategy Initiative think tank. Benjamin, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I counting on Europe is going to be a problem. I think if we're going to guess, what's going to happen is, I think there will be a call to Putin, hopefully before Trump gets in the office. I think that call is not going to be useful in any way. I think if Trump does propose something during the call, it's going to be rejected by Putin, whatever it is. I don't think, unless it's complete capitulation, which I think it's unlikely. And then it all depends on how Trump handles that, because Trump seems to be under the impression that Putin is going to be okay with stopping the war. I think there is no reason for Putin to do that based on his state of mind right now. And so how Trump reacts to that, how Trump reacts to the no, and what leverage that's you want to use against Russia is going to be the question. And if there is no leverage, well, I mean, will he have the balls of saying, okay, then we're going to escalate militarily, or we're going to introduce sanctions that are the real deal instead of the bullshit that's been going so far? If he does that, then we're in the game, and then we're going to see, because Putin is going to say, okay, do it. You know, it's not going to be like, the threat is not going to stop Putin. So Trump will have to do it, and that will hurt potentially allies as well. And then those allies will complain, and how that will work out, we'll see, because Putin is counting on counting on NATO not being united. So it depends on kind of that step. And I'm definitely not optimistic that the war will be stopped anytime soon, because, like I said, there is no incentive for Russia to do that. Ukraine, yeah, absolutely. Ukraine would love a break right now. That would be in their direct interest. So I think Zelensky will say yes to probably everything. And even things that he says no to, I don't think he gets to decide. So, because, for obvious reasons, the US support getting cut would be catastrophic for Ukraine. And I think Zelensky probably understands Trump way better than he understands Biden. The way Biden does politics is very different from Ukrainian politics. The way Trump does politics is very similar to what Ukrainian politics look like, which is very transactional. You could say corrupt as well, but personal. Let's call it personal. So we can see Zelensky talking about natural resources of Ukraine, and giving the U.S. exclusivity on who Ukraine is going to, sell those resources and provide the resources. Exactly the right thing you should be doing with Trump. Because then he can say, well, we got the... You remember him bragging about the oil, or actually complaining that, oh, we didn't even get the oil from Iraq. So Zelensky heard that, and he said, yeah, we have a lot of fucking resources, and you're leaving it all for Russia if you do that. We can also replace the soldiers in Europe by Ukrainians, which means Trump will be able to fulfill the promise of reducing the spending on those overseas military bases, and move those people back to the U.S. Not get them involved. Let the Europeans handle it. Those are the right moves, in my opinion. So Zelensky is, I think, striking the right note with Trump. Whether he'll be successful or not, I don't know. Obviously, people around Trump are extremely antagonistic towards Zelensky, hate Zelensky, starting with Don Jr. But I think potentially the person who will be handling the resolution is not going to be particularly friendly with Zelensky, or fanboying Zelensky at all. Probably the opposite. I'm not saying Elon Musk necessarily. But yeah, I mean, people around Trump have a lot of influence, and if people keep saying, Zelensky's this, Zelensky's that, Zelensky's corrupt, blah, blah, Trump is going to believe that because it gets repeated, and, he won't fact check it because he won't. So what's going to happen most likely is nothing is going to happen very soon, but there's going to have to be movement. I would be extremely surprised if there is a status quo, and if Trump just continues doing what Biden is doing. I would be extremely surprised if that keeps happening. And I think there will be a time limit on the whole thing until spring, because I'm expecting that Trump will stop supplying Ukraine. If he doesn't, then we know, okay, well, Putin said no, so, he's just escalating. But I think he will stop. And that means that Ukraine has maybe 2 to 3 months, because Europe is not going to save Ukraine. And then Ukraine has that personal issue that I'm talking about. So my prognosis would be that we would see significant, this time in March, maybe February, March, hopefully sooner, we will see a resolution and movement in some sort. If we don't, well, then it's just going to be escalation, and if it's escalation, then the person who escalates the most usually wins. So hopefully Trump will be aggressive in that, because if he's not, then it's going to be just Joe Biden continued policy. And then eventually we may reach the nuclear stuff. I mean, it's quite possible, because Russia will become desperate if they don't reach significant success. The support for peace in Russia, I don't know if you guys looked at the Russian metrics on the popular opinion. An incredible majority of Russians want the war to end, whatever means necessary. Здравствуйте, я понимаю. So, yeah, and I think that's just going to grow. I think the nationalism, Yaruski, and all of that stuff, I think it's not as cool as it was initially. And I think most people would just be happy if the war ended in some way, and just people stop dying. At least that seems to be the popular opinion in Russia. And I'm talking about high 60-70%. 60 probably. So I think maybe something like 15% would be opposed to a ceasefire, which is significant, because I think if you're thinking like a Russian You're thinking like somebody like Igor Girkin, who's Russian nationalist, doesn't think Ukraine should exist. A huge minority, of course, of opinion, but that's what he thinks. And he wants Russia to win. He is extremely opposed to stopping the war. And so are most of the, quote-unquote patriots. So that's definitely, I don't think stopping the war would be in Russia's interest at all. But only 15% of the Russian population openly say that, yeah, no, the war should go on. Most people say, yeah, it should end. And then how it should end? Well, it should end on our terms. Then you have a little bit more of those people. But eventually you reach like 60, 70% of people who want to end it. And I think definitely over 50% of people, I don't remember the exact numbers, but definitely over 50% of people want to end the war, whatever it takes. Just end the war, just stop the war. And that is growing dynamically, that is growing. And if you're thinking Putin doesn't see that, you know nothing about dictators. Dictators are extremely sensitive to popular opinions. Their whole thing is to shape the popular opinion. So if that popular opinion, and they definitely don't want to shape the popular opinion the way it's shaped right now. That's not what Putin wants. So the way it is right now, it means that we may see Russia stopping the war anyway. That's a possibility too. And Putin will say, well, okay, here's a hypothetical. I don't think this is going to happen. I think it's very unlikely. But this is what could happen. Putin does a referendum and says, hey, he won't do this again, but let's assume he does the referendum and says, well, let's stop the war. Like, do you want us to stop the war and just defend the positions we have and change the constitution to just include the territories we control and just stop the war? If that's like the proposal from the other side. He does the referendum, the people say, fuck yes. And he says, well, I tried, the people are against it, I followed the will of the people, and I wash my hands, and that's it. I could see him do that. I don't think it's very likely he'll do that. I think he's going to insist on keeping the territories he has. But don't think that the Russians want to continue the war necessarily. I think Putin does. I think people around him do. I think it would be horrible for the Russian economy to stop the war. But I think the Russian people don't understand all these things. And I think the Russian people want to stop the war. I think they don't understand how much the economy is made to, how much the war fucked the economy so that it's now committed to continue the war. And so even if they stop the whole thing, if they stop production, if they stop everything, it's going to be bad. It's going to be a recession almost certainly, and probably worse. So they won't stop, of course. They will continue producing weapons and so on, and that means, inevitably, it means a war again. So, Alex, вы с России? Из Украины? Look at these titles. Yeah, I think I'll be wrapping up soon, unless you guys have something interesting to watch. Could Russia end the war in Ukraine? That's actually a good question. Could they? But yeah, they could, of course. If they would start defending right now, I think the Ukrainians wouldn't really attack that much. I think the Ukrainians would be open to a ceasefire for sure. Okay, guys, so thank you for watching. Do subscribe. I don't know where you guys come from, but do subscribe to whatever platform you're on. I think I'm streaming on YouTube and Twitch today. I want to do Kick. Apparently, you have to pay Restream $10 a month to do it. I don't think I want to. I think we only have one person on Kick. I don't know if it's... I'm going to try a different plugin for OBS that actually does 3 different streams, like does a multi-stream instead of restream, but restream is just easy to do. Just get Kursk first. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kursk is a big fuck you to Putin, because what the fuck do you do? Like, all the rhetoric that came before, like, oh, let's respect the realities on the ground. Well, Ukraine has Kursk, so that's a really good thing to do. Yeah. That's why they're so desperate. That's why they're killing themselves to liberate Kursk. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Follow, subscribe, and talk to you guys later.